Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen of the greater public, we are your overseers. Rather, happy Friday, in other words. We'll just wait for a couple more people to start streaming in, and then yeah, it'll be good. Ooh, that just reminded me actually, because I'm streaming this on Odyssey as well, and I was just at the one of the final, probably the final court hearing for the Odyssey library case, and so I did cover that in my I did a couple of short slash TikToks on that. So I'll just give that a little mention towards the end of this thing. That reminds me just to put it in the the links to show.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, I mean, that's a super interesting situation.
Yeah.
Just legal precedent and regulations and all of that.
Yeah, and it's something that I have a lot of familiarity. Like usually this whole thing, like the regulatory space around anything, but especially crypto, I'm usually not very big on. Like I as long as I know like basically what's going on, I don't care. The only reason I got kind of intimate with this is because one, I'm like a user of LBRY and Odyssey still. Two, I'm good friends with Jeremy Kauffman.
Okay.
And three, the court hearings are literally in driving distance, so I can like show up in person and watch them.
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, I could tell you knew Jeremy, but I wasn't sure if you just knew him from libertarian circles or if he was like your neighbor or something. So
yeah, I mean, next city over, I guess. So like close enough, bump into each other's stuff. I did actually work for a company that worked for LBRY briefly in 2015 or 16, I believe. So some of those early LBRY blog posts way back when I wrote, but that was a long time ago. And then just since 2020 has been when I've been using, and maybe this is the last year. I don't know. I mean, it's get a little gnarly out there.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So anyone watching, please let me know if the sound is working correctly or incorrectly or whatever. Odyssey has had a bug recently where sometimes the sound it just won't have sound, and you have to hit reset stream, and then the sound comes in. So,
do you have a visible like troll box, or would you have to be on whatever platform is streaming?
You probably have to be at whatever platform streaming. I used to have it over on the side of OBS, and then and then it just like every single time it just like not every time, but every like third time it just logged me out, and I just get too lazy to log back in and do the whole thing. And also I kind of got into my habits back when I was still doing this on a laptop, and it would just slow everything down. And now I have an actually decent computer. Now I just, but that is on the list of things. Especially since finally I got to like, fiat monetized on everything. And because I found a way of like making that come out as crypto. And so at some point I'm going to do like the shitty YouTube super chats on the screen as well. It's just like, the ones that take like 40% and then just if you don't want 40%, do these other things.
The Google tax.
Yeah. JP says, sounds good. Hey, Kurt. All right. 6 minutes in. I think this is been a few people watching. It's nice. I think it's probably a good time to roll the intro graphic and then just dive into it. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm joined by the one and only Kurt Wuckert Jr., and this is episode 100. I don't know if you ever saw episode 1 of the Digital Cash Rundown, but Kurt was on that one, and he was on a couple others, and then he started big leaguing me, and then like just kidding.
Come on,
he got busy, and then in time zones, I think it was probably just mostly Friday afternoons. You had stuff going on, like
correct.
Because who wants to like waste, other than me, right? Who wants to like waste this like precious block of like pina colada o'clock? So
it's the thing. It's funny because it always feels like I keep my Friday open specifically to do like flex time, right? Like what do I need to catch up on? And sometimes that is interviews, but man, if I don't have something specific to do, I'm always like, well, it's like 3:00. I'm like, go hang out with my wife and kids. Usually, is what it turns into. So, I apologize because I've always enjoyed. I imagine between all the channels you and I have done, we've probably been on each other's shows 6, 7, 8 times. Yeah, so it's certainly nothing personal, my friend.
Yeah, and so I started making these NFTs for like show guests, and then I just had it in my head. I was like, oh, I'm gonna like make a special, unique one just for if they've been on at least 10 times on this show. And then I was like, that'll be a cool thing that, like, when people get up to that. And then I realized that I already had my friend Spencer had already been on like 12 times.
Oh, funny.
And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta make you one. And then he's like, got deployed to Korea or something. And then he's now he's like,
poor Spencer.
Yeah, so now he's out there having a good time, doing whatever, but not doing shows. So before we go into things, first off, I like to say, I'm like an equal opportunity both hater and lover, and so I have like anyone who's like has something decent to contribute, I'll have on the show, and I'll talk shit about any project. But it's just kind of funny how, like, you mentioned the lightning rod of BSV and stuff, and already there's like someone in the comments saying 5 people watching typical BSV, like, as Mr. Fatso about his Monero chill, or I don't even know. It's like they're not literate people, okay? That's my point. But it just it's funny how you have like the smack talking going on like right away. But anyway,
I love that there's a subset of people that like to remind me that I am bald and also like a fat guy. So for me, I'm always like, that would be insulting, I guess, but the real insult is this presumption that I'm blind or don't know what I look like, I guess. But no, I always find that humor. Also, the Monero thing. People like the last year recirculate. Oh, Kurt's just a project hopper. He was a big Monero guy, as if I'm hiding that or something too. So it's
yeah, I mean, you were a big lot of things guy back in the day, and I do remember the Monero video you did got a lot of views, and that must be why people just like. I saw that image next to his face more times than I saw anything else. Project Hopper,
Yeah. No, well, it's right. There's this maxi sort of nonsense that you can't participate in.
Yes.
In any other thing, and it's the same thing. Like I've probably got 50 euros sitting in a drawer somewhere because I went to Europe once, and I'm not opposed to using the money of an economy when appropriate. So
yeah,
people are funny.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that the endless cycle of the endless like subject of crypto as not just a technology but as a quasi-religious movement, and it's really activated people more than anything else. Like, I mean, people get religious about iPhones and stuff a little bit, but not that much. They still understand it's a phone. But like, the coin that has dog, like, people get all like their hopes and dreams, and it's very strange. Right. It's
my favorite invisible magic money I'm willing to die for, by the way.
Yes, of course. Yes. And just the last little aside on the little tribalism thingy. JP says, I'd love to see this guy say that to Kurt's face, which is kind of funny for like 2 reasons. One, I'm sure like you're a really pleasant person. So like, why would you beef with a pleasant person? And 2, you could sit on their face and like,
well,
like, not for only 2 different opposite reasons. Why would you talk shit to this guy?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you get the tough guys, and it's like, first of all, I'm from a pretty rough neighborhood in Chicago and all of that nonsense. But I'm a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. I was a coach at a serious MMA team for 5 years. Got that decade of Muay Thai under my belt and Kempo karate and all that. But I'm a Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt, and I'm also built like a professional athlete. Like, yes, I'm a little fluffy, but I'm 6'3".
Yes.
And I do sprints and sleds and a kettlebell routine on a weekly basis. So I'm not like, so when you get randos who are like, hey man, you're fat, it's one of those like, we'll do this.
But I mean, I was doing jujitsu last weekend, and some random brown belt friend of the instructor came in, and he's around my size, but like plus 50 pounds of largely fat, I think.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's a weapon. It sucks getting stuck underneath it.
Right.
It really sucks.
Yeah. When you know how to move, I mean, like go watch.
Yeah.
Like this is go back to the Ultimate Fighter season where Big Country Roy was a competitor, and go ahead make fun of the fat guy.
Yeah, I used to play that highlight video of him like smashing people and then rubbing his tummy all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Back when I used to be like 30 pounds heavier, and I'd just be like, yeah, this is me right there with a big old jiggle. But yeah, it's just kind of funny how like people get all weird about stuff, but like in reality, it's just I don't think there's any reason to get like get all twisted up. But anyway, obviously, if you're watching, hit the like button, subscribe if you like this stuff, all that kind of stuff. If you have one of my NFTs, you are in my Discord. You should be. And then you can go to the Digital Cash Rundown channel, and that's the super chat right there. You just can do that. And if you sell the NFT in the middle of the show, you'll literally get booted out of the channel automatically by the bot, which is kind of cool.
Really? Oh, that is cool.
It's so because no useless JPEGs, useful GIFs. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. You can also go to cointr.ee/thedesertlinks and go to my Cointree, throw me a donation, and then that should get you in the super chat. And if it doesn't, because Cointree is broken, I still get the money, and you just get to complain in the live chat. Hey, I sent you super chat. This is what I wanted to say, and I have no way of trusting but verifying, right? So you can. That's your little hack, because otherwise I'll mostly probably ignore you. Let me see. Just make sure that the news stuff. Yeah, that works. All right. So first agenda item. The whole ordinals thing. Now, this is something that I did not pay attention to until it became like a shit show. And now I'm all about it because apparently through Taproot and some other of these, overly convoluted soft fork upgrades to BTC, Bitcoin, they have managed to place large amounts of data on chain, specifically
large amounts.
Well, I mean, four times the official block size. So yeah, and so now we have like 4 megabyte blocks full of NFTs and other stuff like on chain on Bitcoin, and it's like, well, I would rather not like. I'd rather that be able to be 4 megabytes of regular transactions as well. It's kind of weird that there's special types that they allow it to make the block size bigger, but more importantly, like. I don't really care for it, really, but like I don't have a problem with it either. However, some people have problems with it, and boy, do they have problems.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I think it's the coolest thing to happen in BTC in 5 years at least. Frankly, I mean, so it's funny the Bitcoin Civil War, which is the reason I have any audience at all, is I'm a big blocker, and I'm one of the people that's been a big blocker since this got kicked off. And I've always really disliked the small blockers, and not necessarily for any of their technical merits or anything. In fact, I've got lots of talented engineers and all kinds of brilliant software developers and stuff. But it's been the attitude, this high priest maxi nonsense about a good transaction or a bad transaction. And there's this schizophrenic problem between what is a good transaction, what is a bad transaction, but also parsing that with the fact that they believe to their core that code is law. And so if you can broadcast a transaction to the network and it gets mined and it is a valid transaction that comes into consensus with the rest of the network, then why is it a bad transaction? Like you have built a bad network if you're the engineer. So I'm literally picturing guys like Luke Dash Jr., who is having an absolute shit fit over this thing. And it's like, Luke, you're one of the most significant developers of the most significant dependencies in Bitcoin Core. So this is more than almost anybody else on earth your fault. So,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
but then treating it negatively too, like to call it his fault. It's like, again, I think this is the coolest thing that's happened. Like, these are awesome. What is cooler than being able to generate a specific attestation of one of one valuable item, provably and scarcely, on the most powerful proof of network in the history of the world? And then they hate it. It's just like, and it's just everything that I've always like said. Like, small blockers are crazy, and this is why.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I think that a lot of people don't really wrap their heads around somehow, is that you're trying to build a system and you have things in mind that it should do. But mostly it's an open system. It's a system that does anything people want. And largely, you should, first off, I think you should allow people to do anything they want on it, largely. Just anything. If they want to do it, if they can do it, they find value in it, go do it.
If they pay the fee and it's a valid transaction, so you've met the threshold.
Yes. And the other thing is, you'd only have a problem with it if it becomes an actual problem, like you built it to be an open monetary network and it doesn't work as money, for example, for whatever reason. Right. Then you have to figure out how to fix that. Or, for example, let's just say you want it to be this cool censorship resistant thing, but then miners start censoring transactions. You're like, oh, we need to fix something. But either way, you don't get mad at the end user. The end user is just the stimuli. You decide you need to tweak it. Like, the system always works as intended.
Attackers, right.
Yes, the system always works as designed. And if it doesn't work the way you anticipated, and you, for whatever reason, can't just let that be, then you need to redesign the system better so it works the way anticipated. And there you go.
And it also raises a really interesting point about, quote unquote, redesigning the network. So they will talk about all the reasons BTC, Bitcoin Core client, is Bitcoin, is the fact that, well, it'll, if you fire up a 2015 client, it'll sync with BTC. This is how we know it's valid. That is how you attest to validation. And then you've even had Adam Back on Twitter last week saying, well, we should coordinate with the miners to censor this stuff. And but out the other side of his mouth saying, well, hash power doesn't control the rules or enforcement of the rules on the network, the nodes do. So it's like there's these narrative pillars that hold up the social consensus of what Bitcoin Core is to the small blockers, and every one of them has been knocked down clean by one of the high priests. Again, like, if we're talking about Wuckert Jr. and Adam Back, like, we're talking about two of the most significant people in the entire system over there, who are saying conflicting things, but for the same reasons. But they've created this narrative that Bitcoin BTC is this continuous, endless attestation of hard money, sound money. It never changes. And it's like, no, guys, you changed it again and again and again and again. Yeah. And it's got an unintended consequence that you don't like. And now you want to blame people for using the software you distributed to them. It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. And that's the thing about, like, the Bitcoin never changed thing on that real quick. Oh, that could be forever. First off, I think that's something that can only be, I guess, enforced in vision. As in, this is the purpose of it. Yeah. Does it still fulfill the purpose later? But as far as, like, first off, there's been tons of changes by the fact that there's just so many backports that other projects still backport. So there's tons of, like, you need changes. And if you don't change, that in and of itself changes things, because then the actual end, the contextual end use ends up changing over time.
Even the way they change it, like soft forks, they talk about them like they're this brilliant thing, and they are the very definition of brutal dependencies. Like, from a security standpoint, like, looking at the stack that they continue to build on, it's like building an upside down pyramid. Like, well, we've got to conform to, now we're here, we got to conform to all these rules, like on its way down to consensus. And it's crazy. And then they get the reputation, oh, the Bitcoin devs are the best devs in the world. And it's just,
well, there are some valid concerns about the way this thing's played out. It's not all fun games. The Bitcoin Ordinals creator looks for fix after first instance of shock porn, a rather unsavory image made its made it into the front page of the Ordinals website for 30 minutes before it was hidden. However, the image itself is immutable. Now, this is the big, first off, like the uncensorable Bitcoin chain, like this ruins that idea kind of, because you know that they won't allow this to, like, in some way. I think they'll find a way to make sure this isn't on chain anymore. I don't know exactly what they'll do, or will they just be like, and that was that one time. But this is a valid question for any immutable or relatively immutable system.
Sure.
Is there will be things that we really don't want to have on there, not because let other people do their thing, but because nodes and miners, etc., don't want to participate in hosting this kind of thing themselves. And everyone's grappling with it. I mean, for example, the initial release of the Dash data platform won't have enough data capacity specifically for files and stuff like that of that size. But it is a concern that they're trying to figure out, like, how do we basically not censor but also not have to deal with this? And it's I don't think there's a right answer to it, but there's some better answers than others. How much weird, nasty nonsense is there on BSV that you know of?
So as an aggregate, there's more data on BSV than there is on any blockchain. So, if you were to bring it down to a percentage, there's less objectionable material on BSV than any blockchain. But this actually goes way back. Like, there has been illegal pornography on Bitcoin since, I want to say it's 2014. Might be the first time I ever read an article about it. But there's always been ways to concatenate, even when like the file size and all this stuff was very, very small and nobody was doing any of this kind of stuff. There were people saying, hey, it's a database. Hey, it's an immutable database, I think. Like, let's come up with a way to put some stuff there. In fact, there's been some really interesting people that wanted to put 3D printing files, the files that you would feed into a 3D printer to make a 3D printed gun or that kind of thing, and put them on Bitcoin so that they're safe. And those are some interesting protesty use cases for such a network. Yeah. But as I understand it, not long after the op return was opened up in BSV, which, if you know the history of op return, it was brought down to 40 kilobytes in Bitcoin Core, I think in 2016. Also a move by Wuckert Jr, by the way, and one of the things that kicked off the Bitcoin Civil War. But when op return was made much larger in BSV, which was in 2020 now, within a few weeks of that, somebody uploaded some illegal, basically child porn to the network. So that's unfortunate, but just like in any situation, this happens on the quote unquote real internet too. Your ISP just blocks such content. Like, there are content filters. You just don't serve a piece of data.
So is that still on the BTC blockchain?
No, absolutely. Yeah, the stuff from 2014. So unless you were
if I run a node, because I used to run a Bitcoin node briefly, not briefly, for a few months when I did the whole Lightning node thing.
Sure.
But so does that mean that then that file somehow was on my computer during that time?
Yes, 100%.
It just was not able to be decrypted, or it wasn't able to be.
You do.
And then if I did, then that would have been blocked.
Well, in theory, I mean, not necessarily. I don't think that there is a like BTC until the last 2 weeks hasn't had an image browser that's been connected to the network. That's really all you need to do. Is you need to connect the Bitcoin node, and then you send the data to like a JPEG. What would you even call it? Like a plugin. You just need a plugin in a browser that reads JPEGs. And so if you were to do that, you can go back to the transaction or transactions that have the objectionable imagery, and you can view them. So that's just the reality of it. So it would be up to a node operator to proactively not broadcast such an image. So that's the kind of thing. It's part of the reason why you want to be a commercial entity if you're going to operate a node, to say, we had this incident and this occurred, and here's how we mitigated it. But if you do it as an individual, you don't have any of those corporate protections and all kinds of things. And then in theory, and probably not, but you could be implicated in the distribution of illegal imagery. And Who wants
Yeah.
to deal with that?
Yeah, but so that's just a reality for any blockchain, I guess, at this point,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like the way that's been mitigated, it hasn't happened en masse because it's kind of a annoying, at least with the limited op return type stuff. It's an annoying way
Yeah.
to distribute that type of stuff, especially when there aren't a lot of like viewers. But
Correct.
it seems like the mitigation is just meh. Just don't show it.
Refusal. It's a cryptographic system. So in theory, you can use a cryptographic algorithm to provably destroy a file. Like that's one of the cool things that you can do with cryptography, but I don't know how that works in a forward-only database. So especially, you could in theory reorg the block and orphan the bad image, but something from 2014, that's obviously not going to happen. So there's certainly ways, but it's more than anything, it's a coordination problem than a technical problem. So
yeah, but also possibly just a flag. There could be a group, like an auto flagging mechanism in there that would just, if the output resembled certain things within certain, just like an auto flagging thing that knows.
And that kind of software exists. Meta, Facebook, Instagram, like they have those kinds of tools. It's machine learning and looks for nipples, and then that goes to somebody's desk if they're iffy nipples.
Imagine the person who made like nipple finder algorithm.
Right.
Nipple finder GPT or whatever, the AI that just like seeks them out. No, this one has a twizzly hair on it. That. How do I program around that?
Like I picture him running down the hallway. Sir, we've had a breakthrough. Runs into his boss's office. That nipple algorithm I've been working on.
Yeah, it works.
Like, sir, you
can take this to market.
Hearing about this.
And then imagine like weird looking people just getting like misidentified as nipples and stuff, and then it's like,
somebody with big pimples.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. But so all in all, just this new chapter into what the Bitcoin blockchain is used for has just been like it's been a great thing, a great opportunity for me to have a little bit of fun at their expense, as I have been doing on Twitter, as you can see right there.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's very funny to see. That's a perfect meme, and it's very funny coming from my situation, because this is basically all we've been working on for a number of years. So that to watch them, oh, interesting. So if we want to do a file, and I've offered to a few guys, I'm like, hey guys, I run a mining pool on BSV. Like I know how to serve really, really big files over a blockchain if you want to chat. And, fuck you, scammer. Like, all right, have fun. Good luck. So.
Yeah, the lightning rod of things, and
yes,
what I like is it seems to have divided the ever shrinking maximalist community, where some people are very upset, and some people are just like, well, what's wrong with this? This is valid, or they're just like, well, it's not a big deal, not a big enough deal to start censoring the chain and stuff. Right. So, but yeah, that's maybe the thing. These edge cases, I think, are extremely valuable in crypto, and it's crazy it's taken this long, because this is like, crypto is so big now today. This needs to be worked out before the end thing. Just kind of like with like the nano blockchain, they had that spam attack, and they had to implement some extra rules and stuff to like prevent repeated kind of spam messages and stuff. It took a long time for someone to be like, oh, this is feeless. Just go out, go after it. And yeah, I think we need more attacks, kind of more things like this to just figure it all out as soon as we can.
No, well, it's so funny because even like look at the license on Bitcoin Core today. It's beta software. It literally is a 0. I forget what the version is now, 22, 24 or something. And and so even just in the naming scheme, this is Bitcoin Core 0. whatever, and it's beta level software. And so what do you do with beta level software? You try to break it. But it is your duty to try to break it. And I've said this since day one, like, hey man, you didn't have a stress test if nobody fell off the network. And if this is going to be global money and we're going to try to change the world, like what happens if you all of a sudden have a use case? What if any country, here's a great example with El Salvador. El Salvador, oh, okay, it's we're going to use it as money in country. Well, they couldn't use Lightning Network. They couldn't use the main chain. And so the main wallet that they distributed after a bunch of research into what is possible was an Algorand based wallet. So they're sending tokenized BTC over Algo.
A very small clarification on that. It actually is not Algo based, because I had the creator of the wallet on the podcast a little while ago. That was one of the main proposals for the Chivo wallet was one proposal, and it just never went anywhere. It ended up being just like, centralized infrastructure backend, like not blockchain infrastructure in the wallet. Kind of like Strike, Strike just like
sure,
or a Coinbase.
It's in the stack. Yes.
Yeah, but not using an actual blockchain for that, which is one of the reasons why I think a lot of the user experience issues it suffered, and like stuff gets missing and stuff. It's a little bit more like typical bugs than it is like other stuff. But yeah, it's that whole thing was very like tight-lipped for a long time, and then Algo ran around trying to do a lot of things in South America, and then it ended up that way. But yeah, the point stands of you don't really need to onboard like millions of people to Bitcoin if they all download a wallet. That most of what people do is just use it to get USD out of, and so they go to the ATM and then they don't actually, if you're sending Bitcoin from a Chivo customer account to the Chivo main account, you don't actually have to move it at all. And
it's an internal ledger. It's like PayPal to PayPal. There's no bank settlement occurring. Yeah, and that's but it's silly, and it's really silly across. You even get the guys that talk about coins for payment. Things like Dash and Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever else. Like, oh no, we're working on being cash. And I look at Bitcoin Cash. I was on a Bitcoin Cash Spaces the other 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were saying the same thing. And it was the Bitcoin Cash or the BCH podcast was the Twitter handle.
Yeah, Jeremy, I know that guy. He's a great dude.
Yeah, great guy. We actually had a really good time on the show. But what I told him was, hey guys, you're good for about 100 transactions a second globally right now, which is, it's a lot more than Bitcoin Core, but it's also not big enough to even deal with a single city the size of London if it was actually adopted for anything. And so in order to actually scale, you need to completely re-engineer your entire network. And they're all, but we don't want to be too hasty. It's like, well, yeah, but you kind of need to build a highway in between two cities that you want doing business together. And if nobody's investing in that highway, then those two cities never actually do business together. So, it's a chicken and an egg problem, but somebody's got to solve it.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, we're talking about these stressors, right? Like Ethereum handled a lot of transactions compared to Bitcoin. And then they topped out or a little over 1 million on chain. And the reason they topped out that way is because of actual lots of demand for transactions. And Bitcoin also, of course, had it. But then you start to the cash use case, the actual payments thing. It's funny because of all the transaction volume, not just the volume, but specifically the hard to game or impossible to game basically metric, which is total fees generated by the network. Is because people want to pay a few grand a day to spam the network. I mean, keep doing that, I guess.
By all means,
it doesn't matter.
I'd love to mine it.
Yes, by those metrics, I think Bitcoin's third. It's ETH by far, and then it's BNB, like Binance Chain, and then it's Bitcoin, and then it's all these EVM, smart contract, DeFi, NFT, all that stuff. And then you start getting to Litecoin generates $1 grand in fees a day and stuff. Then it's the payments coins are really not being used for that purpose very much. It's very slim,
very little.
As much as that's the number one thing I care about. It's also and that's the number one use case for me. It's still very small. But so
sure.
That's the thing about these. Litecoin seems to be I did another tweet about. Litecoin is the real Lightning Network because Litecoin is doing a respectable 100 grand transactions a day, and some of them used to be for the specific game, but the game went defunct, and the transactions didn't really dip that much. So it's it's the second most used thing on BitPay and stuff like that. Like it seems
Sure.
like the spillover is largely hitting Litecoin, but Litecoin still has room for like millions of transactions a day, or at least a million or so with the current block size and stuff. And
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, we'll see. I mean,
I don't know. I'd have to I'd have to do some napkin math, and I don't have a pen.
well, the basic napkin method, if it's like 200 grand, 200,000 for Bitcoin per day,
Yep.
about 4 times that because of the block interval would be 800
Yep.
grand. So at
Yeah, I
least
know it's 2.5 minute blocks. What is the block size limit? Is it a megabyte
I
as
think
well?
it's still 1 megabyte. However,
Okay.
things get a little weird because they did implement Mimblewimble,
Yeah.
Mimblewimble extension block, and that changes some scalability things depending on
Yep.
who actually uses that. So,
Yep.
but that's just Litecoin. And then you start going down, you got the Bitcoin Cash, you got the Dash, you got the SV, you got eCash for some reason. You got all these kinds of things that just, or Zcash, Monero also. And there's a ton of growing room on all those chains before you start
Yep.
hitting that, like, any one chain needs to process over 1 million. And that's not to say it's not an issue that needs to be solved. Absolutely it is. It's just that
Right.
the reason it's being looked into with like EVM type stuff is because, that's where the demand is now. Although, even then it's just like, what is like Polygon doing like a few million, like 8 million transactions a day.
Yeah, there's
Wax
a few
is
other
like
chains
20
that are doing.
million.
Yep.
But like, they're still not like, we're still baby numbers, and it's only like because ETH doesn't want to scale, and they're just like, push it off to this one. And
Right.
but yeah, it'll be kind of interesting. Let's see, what was the next thing? Oh yeah, this is a fun one, of course, which I care less about than a lot of these other things, but still, Tether CTO denies borrowing from bankrupt lender Celsius. Celsius bankruptcy report by court-appointed examiner, I don't want to say the name, I don't care, either has a typo or is a mischaracterization, Tether's CTO says. So anything's possible, but when you but when you see that, it's when you say, man, it must be a typo that like Tether bought, bro, it's like, really? I mean, if this was like, I would say, I'm trying to pick a
why?
reputable.
Like that's a very curious.
Yeah, like if Kraken said that was a typo, and I'm just picking Kraken out of at random there, I would be like, yeah, maybe. But the fact that like Tether is saying that, I'm just like, come on,
Yeah. No, very, very weird. Well, especially, I mean, Tether. Like we know for a fact that Tether has all kinds of debt vehicles that they're completely happy to just deploy at will. So why would they need to be borrowing anything from anybody, frankly, unless they had a massive withdrawal that they needed to settle? But even then, like how could it even be like just tell them they got to wait 48 hours and do whatever it is you're doing on your back end? Like for them to need a loan from Celsius ever is very, very weird, especially if I don't know when that occurred, but presumably
so
it was a year ago.
The report notes that Tether's exposure eventually grew to over 2 billion, which became an issue in late September 2021 when it was described to the risk committee as presenting an existential risk to Celsius. Denying any exposure to troubled Celsius, what's his name, suggested that examiner, these are terrible names.
Crazy.
Mixed
Absolutely
up
crazy.
the prepositions in the examiner report actually means Celsius loans from Tether instead of loans to Tether.
Oh,
Either a typo or a mischaracterization. Okay, so listen, I'm saying that's possible, right? Mistakes do happen. However, it's like which one? Like billions? Like you
billions.
should be able to
And why
prove
is it not
one way or the
clear
other.
now? Like if you're reporting on it and it was in September 21, you've had 14 months or something, or 15, 16 months to deal with whether it was from or to before you publish it. That's it's pretty sketch.
The Tether situation is it's very strange because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, right? Maybe I should be, but there's a bunch of weird like tribes. One thing I'm a tribal realist, I should say, in that everyone sticks together in certain ways, and there's this weird little like small block BTC maximalism Tether, Bitfinex, weird little like thing. And it's like,
Yep.
of all the centralized stable coins, they love Tether. Like USDC is a perfectly fine option there, right? But they're not into that for some reason.
Yep.
And it's like you could tell that there's something going on there.
It's the liquidity. So it's just like anything else. Like the dollar isn't any. I mean, it's not intrinsically anything, but it's not intrinsically better than anybody else's fiat currency. But it's the fact that it's liquid in the most places, and that is that's all you need. That's what you need your money for. So it's kind of the same thing with Tether and BTC. It's like, it's the most liquid pair, so it's the pair that gets the most, X, Y, and Z. And then, I'm in the mining industry too. So I mean, if you go to buy stuff from China, they want Tether, which is just weird to me. I'm like, hey, can I pay in USDC? My clients want to. I'm in America, and people want to pay me in USDC because Coinbase will settle it, and they're like, oh, no, can you convert to Tether? And no, I don't really have a great way to convert to Tether without going to Binance, which I'm not allowed to do, and so it's just it's just like this crazy crypto nonsense economy, and it's actually making business harder. Like there are things about it that are great, but there's so much nonsense, and it's one of these things where, like, me as a libertarian, it gives me pause about my own worldview, because I've always said, if you just give everybody freedom, then the good people will rise to the top, and the bad, like, people will know that the bad people are bad. And then I see, just in this situation, it's like, most of the successful people are pretty shifty. Like you get big problems basically with a lot of these people when they're given, it's not even any freedom that they've been given. They just decided to be crooks, and then it's attracted a bunch of things. And I'm always like, man, maybe we deserve to be governed as much as we're governed, because we're just really irresponsible, and that's disheartening to me.
Well, that's the funny thing about the whole thing is, first off, the free market has a process, like kind of a discovery process to get through stuff. So it takes a while. As we've noticed, like the FTX blow up, I think was starting to be like one of the first bits of healing fire, because like there's always crashes, like small potatoes, things going bankrupt, Mt. Gox, who cares? But for example, like the fact that Digital Currency Group started to like really sweat this time, and now like Genesis is suing Roger Ver and all this kind of stuff. It's like such a disaster, and that was a squeaky clean, supposedly. Like the suits, those were the suits, the responsible people. That's how you know it's starting to reach, the destruction is reaching far enough. And also just the fact that the crypto space bounced back quite so well after the FTX collapse, despite everything getting wrecked, like all the worst people getting wrecked. I think that's a good sign. But also there's the conflation between like government regulated things and like legit things. And unfortunately at the same time, like when you do, I hate to say like, social contract, whatever, most people view whatever is legal in at least the US and the developed world. They view what is legal to be what is right. And they don't view, there's very little like, the Venn diagrams overlap like very much in that case. And so you have a lot of like the good things, like there's a lot of good things that are illegal, unfortunately, but there's a lot of, I guess the biggest chunk of the good things are legal, and the biggest chunk of the bad things are illegal. And there's all this extra stuff in there. So mostly
there's some stuff on both sides that shouldn't be, but it's minimal.
Yes. And so generally speaking, I personally would trust a white market actor more than a black market actor, all other things being equal, not because I give an actual crap about the laws in there, but because the people who try, like the more legitimate people, try to be legally compliant overall, because that's what society deems to be a sign of being legitimate. And then the bad people, usually if you can't make it in that world, you end up in the other world. And so then it just gives me more pause when I'm looking into that stuff. And it sounds like for non-libertarians, this has got to be like a a
Right.
frustrating thing to be like, of course, come on, just follow the flaw, but
Right.
there's a lot more
Yeah.
nuance there. And so the
No,
thing
for
with
sure.
Tether has been interesting because is the first stable coin that I remember. I mean, I'm sure there's been others. Maybe it's not the first one that was ever created,
Probably is the first one.
but it was up there on the market cap. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, I didn't get it. And then
Yeah.
over time, stuff happened. And it wasn't until after the 2017 or up to the 20, was it like after the 2017 bull run? I forget where, around there somewhere, where
Yep.
I started to realize the entire space was really, no pun intended, but pegged to Tether. And Tether was looking really shaky. And I got scared because I thought, well, I think it's all going to collapse. And I think crypto's going to take like a 5 to 10 year vacation before coming back. And I thought it was just going to be over for a little while.
I did
got
too
scared.
in 2017 for what it's worth. Well, because it seemed really obvious. There was a lot going on really crazy with Tether at that time. And so, yeah, no, it's shocking to me how it's played out. And it's funny. They've just done nothing but take a page out of the playbook of the central banks. I mean, they're the Federal Reserve, man. Like, oh, we can print our way out of this. Watch. And, and same to it's, I would have been the same guy if I was a thinker in 1973. And unfortunately I was negative 13 years old in 1973. But when Bretton Woods and, all this stuff came to a conclusion and, hey, we're full fiat currency, I would have been that guy saying, we've got 10 years before the US dollar collapses. So, and, now it's 40, 50 years later.
Yeah.
And
it lives on.
Right. It's lost another 70-80% of its value since then, but it's still the most liquid currency of the world. It's still powering the most powerful economy in the world. And it's like, okay, maybe I'm not a macroeconomist.
Well, yeah, as I like to say, the free market is undefeated. And a lot of times we like to think we know what the free market should and shouldn't value. And the free market, it needs to speak for itself. And it's, for a variety of reasons, speaking for itself. But so after that Tether moment up there, after it didn't collapse, I was like, whew, all right, borrowed time, like everything's great.
Make it.
But then the space diversified significantly with the stablecoin space. You got USDC, you got BUSD. Of course, there was DAI, which is for whatever it's worth. But there's all these stablecoins floating all over the place, and then Luna, the king of the stablecoins, and then the giant At that point, it was quite diversified, except then Luna just took a lot of things out, but then it didn't take them all out except Tether, or including Tether. It just took itself out and a bunch of other stuff. But then there's still there's more stable coins than ever. They're more prevalent. They're more used, non-Tether ones than ever. And I think that now if Tether died in a fire today, the worst thing that would happen is I would have to I would try not to spend too much crypto for a few months, and then everything would be fine again. The prices would everything would be. I feel like we can lose Tether at this point. So I'm kind of back to throwing little spitballs in the back of their head,
Right. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Hit my ring light.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
Your OnlyFans light.
Yeah. Follow me, guys. I could use the money.
Yeah. So, on that whole thing, so then we go to the regulation, things crashing down. So, if you haven't watched my channel and stuff, I put it out on my Twitter and stuff, but also on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Odyssey and all this stuff. I did 2 1-minute long summary videos from the latest of the LBRY hearing. And so, because I was at the last 2 hearings because they were in Concord, which is not too far away. And so I went over there and kind of did that. And basically, for those who don't know, I'll just talk for 5 minutes and then run out of air, and then you can say something. But so LBRY was is a proof of work blockchain that it was 2005 or so, or 15, I mean, was kind of launched around then, 2016. And that was before the ICO boom. And there wasn't really, ICOs weren't really a thing. And so what most projects did, well, there was Bitcoin and a couple others that just sort of like launched. But what most projects did is they found a way. They did what I call the dishonest pre-mine, where they like launched fairly, but they didn't tell anyone about it until the founder had already like mined like 30% of the tokens that would ever exist, and like, no, it's a fair, because like they try to give lip service to the way Bitcoin launched, but like they by doing other stuff, and LBRY was kind of an honest version of that, where they just literally like pre-mined half the token, just boom, here we go. We're a company running this, but it's decentralized and mineable after that, and so. They kind of did that, and then they got sued by the SEC. The SEC won the case, and basically the judge ruled that LBRY had engaged in an unregistered securities offering, and as such, what the judgment is now, I think the judge is still like arriving at the actual judgment specifically, but the judgment is something about disgorgement, all the profits minus the business expenses since then they have to give back or get rid of or get stolen from them, whatever, and then plus like probably a $50,000 fine. So in some ways, LBRY, the LBC token like pumped by like double almost. It almost like doubled on that news, because that is a lot of good sounding news to a certain extent. They're like, yay, not a security, they just got a slap on the wrist, whatever. The bad parts of all that, I guess, the other nuances are, first of all, because it's still an ongoing case and the SEC just asked for discovery because they're trying to they want an injunction against Odyssey, which is a subsidiary, or it's a separate thing now. They're trying to go after it as a successor, and it doesn't sound like the judge is buying it all. He's like saying, what, you think that they engaged in an illegal securities offering? And well, we're not saying that. Well, then what is there to go after? Well, they're tied to LBRY. Well, so basically, the judge is probably not going to do anything about that, but he did grant some extra discovery, so that strings it along. In the meantime, LBRY and Odyssey employees have not been paid in months because they can't like do anything while they're waiting for the process to go through. And the other thing, though, this is very interesting. The SEC, so the judge is a minimalist, and he rules on what's brought before him, right? And the SEC explicitly did not ask the judge to rule on whether or not the LBC token is a security. And they've been very adamant that they're not wanting to decide that. And the judge wants to decide that, but he can't unless they say it. LBRY wants them to decide it, but the SEC doesn't want it. Now, if the reason LBRY wants to do it because they're confident that it's not a security, it's a proof of work mineable coin, and once the company gets its a slap on the wrist, they're just like, well, then secondary sales, it's all fine, it's legit, and that would really help out everyone involved in the ecosystem to just have that clarity, or to be a securities. You got to register.
Right. Well, and it's funny because I've had such mixed feelings about that specific case, because on the one hand, I think the LBRY team did a really good job explaining what it is they had and how they offered it, and like it was super transparent and utilitarian. Frankly, it was like one of the only blockchain projects that came out that actually had real use as it's even just not just users, but it had users because the use was intentional. And so as opposed to the, hey man, buy this token, it's going to be valuable because of X, like coming soon nonsense. And so like I think they really deserve to be commended on that front. But at the same time, looking at the entire thing, I also think it's really clear that it's a security token. And I think this is the case with a lot of other tokens too. And so in my opinion, it was unwise to fight about whether it was a security or not. It should have been registered as a security from the get-go, because I think it's pretty clear that that's what it is. And then like that would have been a really good precedent to set, not only for their business, but also just industry-wide, and saying, hey, we're a company, and this is a company asset the way that it's been issued. Even, and I know that they're arguing that it's not, but I think that is, I think it's a fallacy. Even from a like an activist standpoint, I'm a libertarian activist myself. I still register my business with the state and the county, and I pay the taxes of my company and all these things. And if I do not, I understand that I'm doing that in a, I'm making my business a black market business, and I should expect whatever fallout comes from that. And so
Yeah,
I
and
don't,
that's not
I
a
don't,
condemnation or a support of the legality of it. It's a reality of the world. Is that you walk
right.
around at night in a dangerous neighborhood and you don't have like a gun on
Yes.
you, you have a lot of risk. And it's not
Right.
saying that that's
You don't,
moral that you
right.
should expect. It's just saying
Yeah.
you will expect because that's
Yeah.
the
You don't
world we're in right
deserve to
now.
be robbed, but your likelihood of
Hmm.
getting robbed is high, and it's your fault you didn't mitigate against that. And
Yeah.
so it's just a, I don't know, it's a crappy situation because again, I really like the library people, and I think that I think their business is good even, but
Hmm.
but unless the purpose was activism, which is also cool. Like, hey, I'm going to specifically break the law in order to try to set a legal precedent.
Yeah. Definitely that
That's
was
a
not the
different thing.
case.
No, and I know that was not the case, but it's like a Rosa Parks kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm not allowed to sit here, but I'm going to sit here, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But but that's also not what they were doing. So
Yeah.
it just sucked.
It's kind of funny how like there's like the like the nuance of the situation made it so that what they wanted to do, they did the best technical solution they could for what their purposes were, to their knowledge, and then they consulted with lawyers and stuff, and they said, yeah, it seems fine. And but just because it's almost like the technicality, because here they could have raised regular capital like a regular company, and then worked on a completely public mine from zero blockchain that then does it, and then they're like, well, we plan to do business models that leverage this. So if you
Mhm.
invest in the company and the library token takes off really well, we're going to do like our business use cases are going to do well. They could
Yeah,
That's probably what they
exactly.
like in the hindsight what would have been the smartest
Right.
way of doing things,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But they want to do something kind of cool, which was, well, we want to do that, but we want to just only raise money in the utility token. And then
Yep.
it's still going to be utility, but like we'll have a bunch of it. And when it goes up, like we're tied to the success of the decentralized blockchain network rather than we raised a bunch of money. We built a blockchain. At some point, the blockchain becomes less efficient for our economic needs. We decided to just cut out the blockchain, just run only a centralized YouTube competitor. And now all the token people are screwed who mined it from scratch or whatever. Like instead of that, they try to like, let's marry the whole thing together. But then it becomes like,
Yeah.
well, but now the whole token thing is kind of tainted. Now
Right.
you like should have registered for that according
Yep.
to the law rather. Whereas like,
Well, and that's
and
exactly it.
and
Like it.
the final point on that thing is there was not a single complaint from a buyer of LBC. No one had
Sure.
they had no illusions about what they were buying. They knew it
Yep.
does this thing.
No, and
That's why they
I
bought
think
it.
that's a
Or
really
they
good point.
And so it's also like a lot of people didn't buy LBC because they're like 50% pre-mined shitcoin and they're just done with it, right? And then
Sure.
it's kind of funny how like this is a clear situation of, in hindsight, this was not the regulated way of doing things, but it was not bad other than that at all, unless you
No, for
just
sure.
don't like. But
100%.
also, except in foresight, right? At the time,
Yeah.
some people could have predicted that this could have been a legal problem in the future. A lot
Yep.
of people, including legal experts who do this for a living, could not have. And that's the thing where the SEC, I mean, in this transitory phase, when like crypto's unlike anything else that has existed, they have the opportunity today to give clear guidelines on what is legal and what is not, and they are explicitly avoiding that for the time being. And that I think is very interesting.
Yep. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's a pain in the ass. And like I said, I really feel for those guys. I think they are good people. And I think your point is really, really important that there were no complaining token holders also. And so who is the SEC protecting and from whom? And I think in that sense, this is why I was very much on the fence about like, do I publicly support them? Because it's the same kind of thing. It's like, yeah, but existing law is also pretty obvious that you're on the wrong side of it right here, guys. And so it's again, I love it as a Rosa Parks kind of thing. And if that was the angle they would have taken on it, like we're taking a stand. We did everything right. We think the law should change, and our business is the precedent.
Posthumously, that's what they're doing. They're being very
Sure.
vocal against this stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't the original intent, but that's kind of what it's serving as. And it's kind of funny how, like, first off, a couple things I noticed. The judge seemed like a very nice and reasonable person who purely looked at, is this, according to these definitions, was this not legal or not? Was it legal or not? And then gave a relatively light but appropriate, according to the law, kind of punishment of this thing.
Sure.
And so you have that good actor. Then you have the SEC, who I'm convinced are entirely evil. Like, there's just I'm not even saying to be hyperbolic. Like, the dishonesty with which they operated, you could tell their goal was to just destroy as much as possible, to drag it out as much as possible, because they get paid by the taxpayer. LBRY runs out of money from legal fees, all that.
Yeah.
But also, even on the good side of the law, so to speak, the nice judge person, like, kept missing his own deadlines of, like, he said, I think I'll have this resolved in this amount of time, kept missing it, dragged his feet, all that kind of stuff, even though he thought he's, like, being a nice old man, but, like, not realizing that the delays. It's like, I think that in the U.S. justice system in general, I think there needs to be a lot of Sixth Amendment lawsuits, because there's no speedy trials anymore. Everything takes years. You're in jail for years for something you never did. And so this is one of those cases where LBRY basically got just, like, wiped out, not because of the actual, first off, not because they hurt anyone at all. That's 100% true. But not even as a direct result of the judgment. Like, the judgment's just like a little slap on the wrist thing here. I was like, whoops, sorry, we'll raise money in a better way next time.
No, for sure.
But because of just the process and the SEC coming after them and all the legal fees and all the insecurity and, like, FUD and everything, just like, something's got to change.
Yeah, it's just unfair systemically. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Joel, man, how long are we going tonight? Because it's like the reason I don't come on the show more often is Friday night, and I got people waiting for me outside a bit.
So how long does it take to shill all your stuff? You have a few little tabs left. We'll power 5 minutes. You power through in 5 minutes,
something like that.
All right.
I don't know. I don't need to shill anything really, but
you posted this thing. Grill a pool, found fresh bananas, all this kind of cool stuff. What can you tell me about this stuff?
So this is a really cool block. The reason that this block is so cool is, first of all, that I could say I mined it, but we mined it. We're a pool. So the apes that mine with Gorilla Pool on BSV, we mined this block. Now it is 3.65 gigabytes, and it's Bitcoin BSV. So Bitcoin protocol, showing you can mine really big ass blocks. But if you look at the average fee, that average fee is 3 10,000ths or 300,000ths. I can't see where the decimal is.
It's like 0.01 cents or so, 0.03 cents.
Very, very, very tiny. But there's also 2.5 million transactions in that block, and the total fee mined is 9.76 BSV. And so the subsidy is 6.25. The total fee is close to 10 Bitcoins, and meaning that the revenue from fees is just a touch over 60%. And so this block is actually the most valuable block weighted in sats in the history of all Bitcoin chains, because it used the least amount of work to generate the most amount of fees, but on the most amount of transactions, to show that the fee market works in a big block Bitcoin scenario, which is a theory I've been theorizing for I don't even know, since 2015 or something. As soon as that conversation got kicked off with the Bitcoin Civil War, and we mined this one in April of last year. And since then, there's been lots of other blocks that are similar, lots of 4 gigabyte blocks, lots of blocks with millions of transactions in them. But at the time this was mined, and it may still be the case, I'm sure it's a top 5 for total transactions of all time. But I'm just super proud of this block, because it proved theories that I've been working on for many, many years. Some of the other things, it was just mined out of the mempool. It wasn't some kind of stress test or something. These were Crypto Fights was having a tournament that day or week. And so these were organic transactions being broadcast to the network. Anybody could have mined them in theory. And we just were aggressive enough to go after them and see if we could mine a block that looked like this. And it turned out we could.
Yeah.
Propagated it across the network, even though we were about a 2% miner on the network as well. So we didn't get orphaned or anything by trying to do such a crazy thing. And so there's lots of firsts and lots of superlatives on that block that I'm super proud of.
Yeah. And so it's basically a spontaneous organic proof of concept, sort of. It's not like a setup proof of concept. It just is this is what can be done when you can operate at scale on chain and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Precisely.
I mean, that's pretty cool. You mentioned also Florida Bitcoin Citadel in Miami.
Yes.
Is this just like an ad for the Citadel in general, or is it a specific event or something?
So no, so it's the office I'm sitting in right now. I'm broadcasting out of the Blue Room at the nice. South Florida Bitcoin Citadel, and we've got probably 6 or 7 people outside working full time right now. We get another dozen or so guests out here every week. We do meetups in this space. We do workshops. We do hackathons. We do all kinds of things. But this is a full time. It's basically people here from about 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. 5 or 6 days a week. Although there are a couple key holders and anybody's welcome. You can do all kinds of events here. But it's another thing that I'm really proud of. I think it was 2016, I went to the Ethereum Chicago meetup when it was like 6 people and nobody knew what Ethereum was. So, and from that group spawned what became this massive dev economy in Ethereum. And it really was just the power of people working together, sharing ideas and cross-pollinating. And I've wanted to build a space like this for years now. And I finally just got it open in the last couple of months here. I'm very proud to be one of the partners here that opened it up, and people love it. Yeah. So for anybody that wants to take a little vacation, Southeast Florida, Palm Beach County, anywhere, if you stay anywhere between Boca Raton and West Palm Beach, you're a hop, skip, and a jump. You can come work here, make it a little pilgrimage. This can be your Mecca, and you'd be welcome to come share some time and work here in the space.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cool. I definitely will stop in at some point in the future. Again, my travel schedule has been a little bit restricted.
For everyone that's cold right now, I know it's very, very cold in the Northeast.
It's in fact,
85 degrees here right now.
Let me see what it is right now. This is a cold day, by the way. It's I think it's 3 Fahrenheit right now, but with a lot of wind. And it's getting down to a comfortable -13, much colder than that with the wind chill. But it's funny because I mean, I'll even like show you like, won't show too close, but like it's like yesterday was a high of 33 and a low of 6, which is kind of brutal. Today is a high of 3 and a low of -13. Then Saturday, high of 12, low of 6. But back to Sunday, it's a high of 41, low of 30. Regular winter. It just is like
great.
2-day drop. I'm running the wood stove the whole time through. But yeah, it would be nice day to be in Florida. And then there's the meetup thing. And then this another busy day at the office. Let me look at some of these images right here.
Yes, sir.
The Bitcade. It looks like a nice place. I can see that Doge's butthole right there. He's just flashing at the camera right there.
It's a real Shiba Inu, so that is a totally legit Shiba Inu butthole you're looking at.
Yes, certified on the blockchain. It looks like a nice fun space. I definitely would stop on by.
Please do.
All right, so before we wrap up, every time we have someone on, I do mint some NFTs, and I have a proof of work and proof of stake version. Proof of stake means you buy it, and then you get into my cool Discord and super chats and all the other cool stuff. Proof of work means you work for it, which is what this one is. You come on as a guest to the show, you work for it, and then you get you can only work for this one, the guest NFT. So I already sent it to you on Polygon. I do it on Polygon and Wax right now, but I will mint these on any network possible that does have at least a Discord and Telegram token gating bot. And so as soon as you get something like that on any network, I always tell people I will go do that. And there you go. So congratulations. These things sell for about $100 when they're the non-exclusive, the proof of stake version one. So there you go. You can sell this. but it wouldn't mean that the person who bought it was ever on the show. It just means they got it from someone who was
buying
on the show.
collectibles. Yeah. No,
And
cool.
so in the metadata for the actual NFT, it has instructions on how to join the Discord and the Telegram. And then the bot checks if you have it or not. And then you get in. And as soon as you get rid of it, the bot will kick you out. So there you go. Any parting thoughts?
No, just good to talk to you again, man. It's been, I bet we haven't done a show together in a year. You're looking well.
Thank you.
And no, just, don't be a stranger. And sorry when I'm a stranger. I'm not too cool for school. I'm just too busy.
Yeah, too busy for dizzy. I don't know. I couldn't make it rhyme correctly. All right, guys. All right. Before you're on your way out, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Yeah, there's more people watching than have hit the likes. That must be Tom and all his sock puppets. That just are too grinchy to. Come on, listen. I have Maxis on too, so can you hit the like button and subscribe? I'm going to release the next episode of How to Live on Crypto probably next Monday. No promises because I'm late all the time, but yeah. Then that'll be really cool. I'll promote the crap out of that. Go follow Kurt's stuff. Is it Kurt Wuckert Jr. at on Twitter?
That's everywhere. Yep. Kurt Wuckert Jr. Telegram, Instagram, and anywhere you want to follow me.
Okay. And final question: are you related to Luke Jr.? Because you both have the same last name.
No,
really
not
silly.
by.
Really silly.
No, we both live in Florida though. He's on the other coast. Luke, I believe, lives near Tampa, which is the West Coast. So he's welcome to come work here at the office if he'd like to figure out how to soft fork BTC down to 300 kilobyte blocks and kill all the fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure he could charge because people would show up just to look at him and take pictures with them, even if they don't like him. So, I mean, he did unfortunately experience a financial setback this year or this last year, whatever it was. So this might be a good time. Luke, if you're watching this, which I know you for a fact you're not, but if someone is, come to the Bitcoin Citadel and then ask them for monetization opportunities. Make back your stash, and this time, make sure to protect your private keys the right way. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend. Don't forget the taxation is theft, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Go on.